This video is the third in a little series about the tragic loss of children through miscarriage, stillbirth, or early infant loss. In the first video, I tried to say something about the very eloquent witness that these souls offer us in the church and the world. In the second video, I tried to say something about the psychological and spiritual struggle that mothers and fathers might experience through these tragedies. In this third video, I want to say something more about these struggles, and I want to address the very difficult topic of the sense of guilt that we might sometimes have when we lose children so tragically. One of the most difficult things in my life as a priest is to think that I in some way have harmed others, whether by an intellectual failure, say my inability to thread the needle and say exactly the right thing to someone in spiritual direction, or to have the perfect phrase that communicates the consoling message of the gospel in a classroom or in a homily, or whether by my moral failure, by my impatience, my inability to be present to someone with the love that they deserve. In one way or another, I know that sometimes my weaknesses, whether just simply by my natural weakness or by my moral weakness, I, who should be a blessing to others, have caused them harm. This is difficult for me as a priest, and I imagine we all suffer moments like that. We want our lives to be what they should be, blessings for others. We want for God to be able to make us into gifts to others. We want to make of our own lives gifts to others. That is our greatest happiness, to lose our lives in love. And so it makes every bit of sense that we would be preoccupied and sad if we ever perceive that we have not been a gift to others. I imagine, of course, that parents, like everyone else, can experience the same dynamic with their children. Anytime a parent feels that he or she has done anything that has led to anything negative to a child, whether through some circumstance out of their control or through some moral fault, can feel very, very bad. I know I've talked to parents who still struggle, wondering whether a decision they made many, many years ago has not led to some suffering that their child is undergoing today. Parents who suffer miscarriage, stillbirth, or early infant loss can sometimes suffer the same agonizing questions. They can know the same pain. I would encourage parents, and indeed everyone, to recognize that we are in no way morally responsible for our weaknesses of nature. The circumstances of our lives that are out of our control do not enter into the sphere of our moral responsibility. As creatures, we are in so many ways vulnerable, genetically, environmentally, our diet, even our behavior and the things that happen to us. So many things that not only can we not even control, but could never even analyze exhaustively. There are so many factors to a healthy pregnancy. Trying to analyze them all and decide what happened can leave our minds perpetually spinning. And the truth is, we are not omniscient. We cannot know for sure, and so often even for probable, what has happened. The best we can do so often is just learn to accept in humility the limitations of our knowledge and our control, and trust in God. It can be very tempting to desire an explanation for whatever tragedy we have suffered. We can desire an explanation so much sometimes because if we only know why something happened, then we might have the power to control and make sure that it never happens again. In the pain of our tragedy, sometimes we reach out for an explanation at all costs, even an explanation that would unfairly, unjustly put ourselves at fault. In such moments, let us learn the lesson of Job. Let us learn to wrestle with God. Let us bless our desire to know why something has happened. Job is righteous in desiring to know the plan of God. Job's friends come to him and they try to give an explanation that eliminates all mystery to Job's life and suffering. They claim to know that Job is suffering the loss of his own children and livelihood, because Job, in their judgment, has sinned. Job insists he's done nothing proportionate to his sufferings, and he cries out continuously that God might tell him why what is happening is happening. Job, in his defense of the mystery of his own life, in his confidence in the beautiful, intelligible plan of God, and therefore his seeking of that plan, Job is right. His friends, who would offer superficial, reductive analyses of why he's suffering what he's suffering, they are wrong. Indeed, by the end of the book of Job, we see that God allows his suffering for some other reason than that Job has sinned. It was not Job's fault that he lost his children and his livelihood. God's justice is not some tit-for-tat, karma-like equation where everything balances out in a mathematical equality. God's justice is his benevolent plan for all creation, his wisdom stretching from one end of the cosmos to the other, from the beginning to the end of time, Alpha and Omega, to turn our lives and all of human history into an expression of the mystery of his Son who passes through death into resurrection. This mystery is what we are living for. This is the answer to the great why that we should have the courage to ask. It is the answer to the question that we should have the courage to keep open for our entire lives until one day we see God face to face and come to understand the mystery of his Son as he has been living his death and resurrection in our own lives and in the lives of all those we love, including the lives of those who have died so prematurely. When God visits Job at the end of the book of Job, he vindicates his search, and he criticizes Job's friends. He tells them, "You have not spoken rightly about me, as has my servant Job." When tragedy strikes, let us grieve in faith, and that means let us truly grieve. Let us acknowledge in humility our desire for an answer we do not yet possess. But let us grieve in humility, and thus with trust that the Creator one day can indeed vindicate himself and show us an answer to our question that will be more satisfying than anything we can imagine. Let us keep this in mind also as we try to console each other, especially as we try to console grieving parents. Let us recognize the limitations of our power to stop their tears. Let us be willing to accompany them in silent prayer and solidarity. Certainly, let us calm our own anxieties and desire to fix their suffering. Let us be sure to chasten our hearts, lest we ever offer some cliché or superficial solution like Job's friends. It is better to sit in silence and pray with someone than to offer words we just don't have the right to say. Perhaps a small gift, a card, an ornament on the anniversary of the death of a child could be such a silent, prayerful accompaniment. Some little note to let them know that you grieve too. But nothing that would cheapen the grief, only what would share the grief and stand next to them as they in expectation wait for God himself to dry our tears, for God himself to give us the answers that we long for.